Today we have Elliot, LeBeau with us. Downwinding is still number one. SUP Downwinding is still number one, or just downwinding in general? Because you could downwind it with a Parawing.
I'm like, got this Parawing dude here. Hey, just grab your Parawing. No, you need to paddle.
Yes.
Yeah, just take this thing. He just jabs this needle in my knee and starts extracting blood. My point is, that's how I got started with ACL production.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
So you're looking at this gust coming, and you feel it, and you got about 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. I need it to like respond now. In the future, we should just be tacking the whole time.
Oh yeah, it's an elegant way to ride, isn't it?
Right. And once you've experienced downwinding and the pureness and freedom of not having anything in your hands, that's like the ultimate feeling. What I did notice right away is you can go upwind better unhooked than you can hooked.
Explain that to me.
Like for me and you, we saw it and instantly knew what to do with it. It's like you discovered hey, we figured out this way to fly to the moon. Are you interested?
Welcome to the Lab Rat for the podcast. My name is Dan, and today we have Elliot LeBeau with us. Elliot is the owner of ACL Productions and has a very interesting history in board sports. Welcome to the podcast, Elliot.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me. And like I was telling you before, I watched a lot of your different episodes, and I think it's awesome what you're doing as far as helping new people with information. And then for those of us that are already in it, it kind of, reaffirms a lot of the stuff that we're finding and testing them and figuring out the boards and what front wings to use and, what type of Parawings to use. So anyway, much appreciated. And
oh, dude, I'm actually honored to have you, man. You have such a rich history with every sports that I have been involved with, from kitesurfing to winging, and obviously now downwinding and parawinging. So, and I have I admire you a lot because I have a history in video, and I know the quality of the stuff that you do is just incredible. So I really want to touch a little bit on your background, give our audience a little bit of an understanding of what you've been through, in your sporting career, riding for Cabrinha, all the way, where did it all start? And then how did filming and video got, introduced into your life? And then we'll start talking about foiling and parawinging. But why don't we start from the beginning? Where did it all start for you?
It started as far as being involved with wind type sports through windsurfing. And when I was 12 years old, I grew up in Texas, really close to Galveston Bay. And my dad and my older brother were into sailing, but my dad had bought an old Mistral Kailua. You'd have to go way back. But if you know what that is, it was like the original, Dacron triangle sails. And my dad and my brother were trying it, and I remember trying to pull the sail out of the water and struggling with it. I was 12 at the time, and when you're 12, you're kind of into soccer, you're into sports and stuff like that. So for me, it was kind of the water activity was kind of a foreign thing for me, and I just kind of attached to it very quickly. I knew, not that I had planned to do that for a very long time, but I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do, and it kind of fit me. And I remember as I was learning it and getting better at it, getting into 13, 14, and phasing out of all the ball sports and into water. And then I just became, that's all I wanted to do. And so it did start with windsurfing from a very young age. And how I ended up here on Maui, I've been here about 27 years now.
Amazing.
And so, when I'm starting windsurfing in Texas, it's far different conditions than Maui has, obviously. And, we're in brown water in Texas, and the waves are maybe waist high. And so, I would look at these magazines of everybody who, Robby Naish and Dave Kalama and Pete Cabrinha, all these guys, and see these like Hokipa blue waves. And I'm like, man, I got to go there one day. And so as I got into more windsurfing, and I ended up, coming to Maui more as I got older, and graduated school, and ended up coming to Maui just pursuing windsurfing. And I remember getting off the plane here and seeing just like this green sugar cane waving in the wind, and then I saw the water was this electric blue.
Amazing.
I remember getting in the water, and I was like, wow, you can see your hand underwater. I can see my feet, because I was used to brown water back in Texas. And so I went through everything that a new windsurfer not from Hawaii goes through, which is go out of Hokipa, go get slammed on the rocks, get urchins in your feet, do all the things that you're not supposed to do. I did them all. And I think that's was good for me to go through all of that. Learning about waves, learning what waves to go out in, and then seeing all your idols on the beach and what they're doing. And so I had pursued windsurfing, and I was kind of into the racing and slalom and a little bit of the waves. So I was going at Hokipa a lot, and I was also racing at Kanaha and pursuing the races, and then did a few events on the tour, like Aruba and Barbados, and didn't really do that well in them. And so we were living in Haiku at the time, and I was at that point where I'm not really I was progressing with windsurfing, but it was just kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna what's next for me. And my roommate at the time, who was also windsurfing, was Lou Wainman.
One of my favorite kite surfers of all time.
So we were roommates.
That's
we
incredible.
were both windsurfing. He's from Florida. I'm from Texas. And we were both windsurfing at the time, nothing to do with kiting at the time. This is way before kiting had ever started. So I'd be going out windsurfing at Kanaha, and I remember seeing Flash Austin with what the funny part about this is Flash had this kite, and across the kite was this logo called Razzles, which is this bar in Florida that he used to take his skimboard, ride this, and it was a ram air kite.
Yep.
Very similar to what we're using right now, but just on longer lines. Had Razzles on it, which is the bar in Florida. So he had this one kite. He would come down through Kanaha and just like launch these airs. And he would just float around. And so I had seen, I'd been going to the gorge since I was probably 18 or 19 years old. So that's like 1988, 89. I've been going to the gorge for windsurfing. And I'd seen Corey Rosler, obviously, who's the true godfather of kite skiing / surfing, but no one had ever really ridden with a surfboard style, which is Flash had just started doing that. There was like Rush Randall, Laird Hamilton, Sierra Emery. All these guys had started to get a hold of these Whippica kites. And so I would come home and I'd be like, Lou, did you see Flash out there? He was like levitating and stuff. And Lou comes from a wakeboard background in Florida, right? So he was real familiar with the cable. And I remember him telling me he saw it, and he's like, oh man, we can wakeboard off these things. And I told him, I'm like, nah, there's no way, man. There's no way you can ride a wakeboard off of one of those things. He's like, yeah, I know we can do it. And the funny part is like, I had no faith in him. I was like, there's no way you're going to ride like a wakeboard off of one of these kites. And so sure enough, we got a hold of them, Whippica 5.0s, 2-line kites, the very beginning. The little mini pump, you pump the thing up. No idea what we're doing. And he happened, we did start on Jaws tow boards. We had these Timponi. I bought mine from a guy named Lou Cargraves, who sold me one of his old Jaws boards. So at the time, everybody who was kiting were basically reusing whatever boards they had in their garage, which was tow boards.
The smallest tow board probably you could get your hands on,
and they happen to have foot strap inserts too, so you can stay attached to the board. So we were riding these things. We hadn't learned to go upwind. We were launching at Hokipa, hot launching, getting drugged through the sand, launched out, and we're doing downwinders.
Yeah.
It's very similar to what we're doing now, but
unintentionally, just what you could do at the time.
Right. So we didn't know we could stay upwind. So we had gone a little bit, and then Lou also worked at a surf shop called Hawaiian Island Surf and Sport, and Jimmy Lewis was making boards for a guy named Lenny there, and he had met Lou, and he's like, "Hey Lou, I heard you're in this kite thing. Why don't you just come up and we'll shape a board?"
Nice.
And so he got linked up with Jimmy Lewis, and we started to build like this giant twin tips,
I think I remember those. Did they have like that nose that went in and out? Like a little fork?
Yeah, that was, these are like 5'6" long twin tips with full-size sailboard fins in both ends. Like, we didn't know. We're like, this will make us stay upwind. And so we went, by the time the boards got built, we had already gotten so much better that we were on like normal size wakeboards. And so we received these boards, and they're 5'6" twin tip.
Oh God.
Huge boards with, and they didn't work at all because what we needed at the time and how long the boards took to get built, we had already progressed enough to where we could launch in one spot and come back to the same beach and get in our truck and leave. And that was like a big day. And I remember the day that happened at Sprecklesville when we came in at the same spot. And then we were like, oh, we just need to be able to edge to stay in one spot. And we've been riding these tow boards which had fins, and you couldn't really hold an edge with them.
Yeah, no rail.
And so once that happened, we started to be able to just launch, come back to the same spot. And we found in our sorry, getting a little long-winded.
No, dude, I love this stuff because actually Lou was my favorite kite surfer for a long time, and I love that you guys were roommates because I haven't met anyone who was that close to him. What was he like? He was one of those guys that I saw in the water that just came with a different energy, like a creative, just sendy kind of guy. Like, what was he like?
Very unique individual. I haven't met too many people that are like him. Intensely focused, and he had a brain that was like working ahead of its time. Meaning, I used to always tell him that the stuff that he was doing early on in kiting was so far ahead. I would tell him like, Lou, you're too far ahead. Like no one can figure out what you're doing because you're so far ahead of the game. As far as maneuvers goes,
like he was doing handle passes, and nobody would even be able to ride the thing, and he was doing handle passes on them.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
But we did share a similar mindset of wanting to always like tweak gear, meaning like we would get something, pull it all apart, rebuild it, chop it, make it to what we want, go test it, come back in that night, stay up all night, tweak something else.
Love that.
And so, the early like line winders, we chopped the coat hanger and taped them on to make like the things that could stay on there. So we were just literally changing it, trying it, and then the next day would be an innovation of like, oh, we made line winders, so now your lines don't get messed up. And then we figured out, oh, you have to wind the lines in a figure eight so that they come out even. And then these little things that we were figuring out. And I guess my side thing was when we were doing all these downwinders before we learned to stay upwind, when we would come in from Hokipa, we would come in at Ka'a because it's a little sheltered cove in there. And so we come flying in and we hit this little flat water spot. We're like, oh, this is nice here. There's no chop in here. And so we would come in there and there would be nobody there, maybe a couple fishermen. And so after we learned to stay upwind, we just started, why don't we just launch there and stay there and ride in this nice flat water? Because with a wakeboard, you're definitely nicer to be in flatter water than rolling through chop. And so that's basically how we started kiting at that Ka'a area. It was the flattest water. It was a sheltered launch. And then, kind of just turned into a giant party of people learning to kite that were like, oh, I guess we just go to Ka'a, and that's where you go out at.
Yeah.
And so we spent a lot of years down there learning tricks, learning to launch, just in the early days of kiting as far as the flat water stuff goes. And we would still push like the wade riding side at lanes, and we were kind of shut down from Hokipa. It was kind of a sensitive subject as far as having kiters mix in with the surfers and windsurfers. So we would usually just stay down at lanes and ride waves on the good days and practice our whatever we were trying to learn down at Ka'a.
That's so cool.
And that led me, we pursued that. That led into foiling for me in 2004. I was riding for Cabrinha at the time, and Pete, who was involved with Laird, Dave, and the whole strap crew, had already had his setup with the airchair foil and the boots and everything that. And I was on my way back from there's a kite contest in Silva Plana in Switzerland. It was like one of the early ones. I was on my way back from Switzerland, visiting my folks in Texas, and this ski shop in Texas had an air chair foil. And I'm like, I'm going to...
Of all places, you found an air chair in Texas.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I'm putting this in my board bag and bringing it back to Maui. And so bought it. Yeah, I just bought, it was a mast, foil, aluminum, whole setup. Threw it in my board bag, came back to Maui, and handed it off to Jimmy Lewis, who was building all the boards at that time. And I had to go get like I had to chop the top and weld on like a T so that Jimmy could like screw it into the boards. And that's how those guys like Pete and Laird and Dave were modifying theirs. And he built me a board, and I got the K2 clickers, and then me and Pete, we would go out, and that's right when I started riding for Cabrinha, we would go foil on, it was like the CO2, I think was the very first Cabrinha, right when they learned to depower.
Yep.
And we trudge out with our K2 clickers, click in, and then go foil around.
That's so early. That's so cool, man.
It's very early on, and I definitely remember of days when I would launch at Ka'a and go all the way upwind to Hokipa, and very quickly. Like,
wow.
They would go upwind insane. I would go up there, ride waves, and come all the way back down. And we did that. We also used to tow with it a little bit too. I would go out with Pete and sometimes Rush Randall, and we would tow on the smaller days. Nothing huge, but I do remember it just being super sketchy with the boots and just being locked into them. Yeah. And I'm really bummed because I know I sold all that stuff, and
that would be awesome just to own and just
like,
leave it in. Oh.
If somebody out there somewhere has my setup, and I'm just wondering where it ended up, because I would love to like get those original boards back. So I'm sure incredible. At some point someone's gonna watch this and be like, "Hey, I have that board."
Well, hopefully, man. It's a museum piece, to be honest.
Yeah, and I regret actually a lot of the early kite stuff, not keeping it. Jimmy does have a lot of the original like pickle fork style boards that were done by Liquid Force. So Jimmy has a lot of those relic boards, but a lot of that stuff ended up under the house, and I'm just like, oh, I'll get rid of it. I'm like, dang, I wish I would have kept some of that stuff, and in particular the foil stuff.
Yeah, it's a relic, man. It's amazing.
Well, now that I'm like total foil brained again, I'm like, where's my original air chair foil, which I don't have anymore.
Did you get into filming while you were working with Cabrinha?
My filming started in '99. So while we're in this whole kite thing, this is very early on. So it was basically not a lot of. It was like Robby Naish, Pete, there's a crew of us on Maui doing it. There's a crew in Europe doing it. Rafael Salles, Mauricio Abreu from Brazil, and Rafael's sister Valerie Salles would put this contest on in Leucate in France, and so it was like Maui versus France. You know? So myself, Lou, all the Maui guys flew out to meet up to go against the French guys. You know, it was like,
Nice.
it's, and so I don't know if you've ever been to this particular spot, but it gets very windy, very offshore wind, very cold too. So they put us up in these little like villas right on the water. And while you're waiting for the contest to start, you're eating croissants and pizza and you're in this you're in your warm little room, right? And then, Valerie decides, kiters are going out, and it's blowing like 40, gusting to 50. And it's like, it's like 40 degrees, and you just were eating pizza and croissants all warm, and now you got to put this wetsuit on and go compete, right?
Send it.
So, so zero warm up. So what happened with me is mid-heat, in one of those heats, I went from being nice and toasty and warm, throwing a wetsuit on, going out, and we're launching jumps right by the beach and stuff. And I remember had zero warm up. It was super cold, and it was in one of my heats. I landed right in the middle of two pieces of chalk, and my board stuck, and my knee went straight back.
Oh, dude.
And tore my ACL.
Yep.
And knew when I did it, I've never done it before, but I knew I'm like, oh man, I did something to my knee. I'm not sure. And so, I drug myself back to the beach, and I was stuck in my boots. I'm like, Lou, I need help. Get this board off me. I think there's something wrong with my knee, but I'll be fine. And then, the next day, the thing just blew up, and I'm still in denial as it never happened. I'm like, I'll be fine. And this is at the very beginning of the PKRA.
Yeah, right.
Meaning like PKRA number 1 was the next week in Austria.
Oh, what a shame.
So I'm like, I'm going to do the tour. It's going to be awesome. But first we go to this Leucate event, and then the whole tour started from ground zero. The very first one was Austria.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh man, I'm still going to Austria. This is my chance. I'm going to get on tour, and the kite tour is starting. And, so I traveled to Austria from Leucate with my knee, this big balloon. And I get there, and at that same event, Flash hurt his ribs in Leucate as well. So we're both there kind of like injured, and we're like, this new PKRA is starting in Austria, and I'm like looking at my knee. I'm like, man, there's no way I can do this. And Flash is out with like a rib injury. So the organizer of the event, I'm like, hey, I need to fly back to Maui and just take care of this thing. And Flash is like, yeah, I'm out of here too. My ribs are screwed. So they gave us the tour doctor, right? And some guy in Austria is a doctor, and kites or something. We're like, go to this doctor's house. And I'm like, I gotta get on a plane. Like, you can't fly with your knee; it's huge, right?
Yeah.
So me and Flash go to this PKRA doctor's house in Austria, and he goes, lay down. I'm like, okay. He gets out this like needle.
Oh god, he's gonna drain it. Oh no.
And I'm like, what are you doing? And Flash is sitting there like looking at me, laughing. He just jabs this needle in my knee and starts extracting blood. And I'm just looking at my knee swelling, go down and down and down. And that was the only way I could fly back to Maui without it swelling back up again. So, and Flash didn't have a needle or anything, but he flew back as well too with me. My point is, that's how I got started with ACL Productions. I blew my ACL out, and after I
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
So, it's a very long way to tell.
I love it.
I was getting somewhere. It just took a little while. So the ACL Productions was from my ACL that I blew. I got the surgery. I had 6 months rehab. Everyone's at Lou, all the guys, and I'm sitting there on crutches. What am I going to do? I had a video camera and just started filming. And then I ended up with so much footage that I'm like, I guess I got to learn how to edit it. And we were working with Chris Tronalone at the time, who was also involved with filming kiting in the very early days. And he kind of taught me how to
do like
edit.
the Space Monkeys
Yeah.
movie? Man, that
Yeah.
I watched that thing on repeat
Yeah.
when I was starting, and that was just everything for me.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was Chris Tronalone, his little brother Buster Tronalone, and Shanti Berg. Were around early days filming all of that stuff, and so I learned from him as far as the editing goes. And we had done a video called High. I don't know if you remember that one. That was with
Watched
Chris.
all of those things.
Yeah, I
man.
mean those are very early, kind of right when we got a hold of the wakeboard stuff. And there's some even earlier stuff before that for Air Rush, when they first started. So I basically learned to edit and made a video called 10-4, which was all of the stuff that I had accumulated during my injury lumped into one DVD. And that was the time when you could make DVDs and like actually sell them and make money back. And then that's kind of how it started for me, was just through filming kiting. And then, you progress through into surfing. You just progress into different stuff that you like shooting wise. And now I definitely still do a lot of, I do film a lot of foiling stuff, obviously, with KT guys, but I do a lot of commercial stuff besides that, which is really what allows me to, money wise, is where the money's at versus the wind sport industry.
Man, I love that you like seen a lot of the sports develop through the lens of a camera, because I share some moments that I was filming friends or people doing amazing things that you're seeing it through the camera, and you just have that moment of like, oh my God, this is a historical moment. What are those moments that you recall from being behind the camera that you said, this is a landmark moment right there? And I've seen everything that you've done, not knowing sometimes that you've done it. But even like the sessions, like you did some historical filming in Piahi, and like you've seen so much, man.
I mean, I was very fortunate to see I was around early enough in the kiting thing and fortunate enough to witness it happening in live in front of my eyes. Like, for instance, when Lou would stomp something new, no one had ever done it before. And so somebody filmed it, and it was the first one to ever film a mow or a slim chance. They're like, oh, I guess that's the new thing now. Everyone's got to do it. So there's stuff happening daily that someone would do a new trick, had never been done before. And then if you filmed it, you're the first one to ever film that.
Yeah.
And once that video got out, people would slowly get word of it. It's not like it is today where it's instant. Everyone knows about it. And the next day, someone's already doing it, and he's half your age.
Yeah.
On the Jaws side, that was, I mean, I was shooting the Jaws stuff when the towing was a big thing, and it was just progressing into people starting to paddle it. And so there's a lot of monumental swells that happen where people paddling it. Most notably, like the October 2012, when Shane Dorian got the one kind of legitimate paddle barrel that kind of sparked everything of like, wow, okay, you can paddle in, pull in, and come out without the use of a jet ski. And that was the October 2012 swell, which I felt was like a big moment for the paddle scene out there. And obviously the stuff that Kai does there, I mean, it's like no one's doing that. And every time
day
he
something new.
I mean, literally a month ago, he did 6 sports in one day, and the last thing he did was Parawing. He cycled through this entire boat full of toys, and that's there's no one else doing that. And so that stuff, you get kind of used to it out here, I think, because you're just surrounded by this group of people with this mindset. I don't really know how to describe it, but if you come out here, you would instantly be like, oh, this is a crazy group of people from especially the foilers who are 100% addicted, either from this downwinding, winging, proning, parawinging. If you go to Kaha, there's kind of like a group of addicts, is how I describe it.
That's everywhere in the world,
you see
isn't
every
it?
day. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but we are in it, so we don't see it. But if
Yeah.
you came, you like, but then you'd be like, oh, these are my people.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
how it feels, you know. But I mean, it's just every day. We have great conditions every day, and it's just there for the taking if you want to participate. Which makes it sometimes difficult to maintain that balance
Yeah.
between family, working, and foiling is a constant juggle
Yep.
of like trying to, you know, keep your cup full, but also, you know, work and spend time with your family, which leads me to another thing on this up-down thing with parawinging.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just rambling. But so, you know, if you have kids and a job, your time
I know
is
where you're
very
going.
slim.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know where I'm going.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I'm really trying to like, is this legitimate? This up down thing, is it for real? And so I've been doing a lot of solo launching at Ka'a, cranking up wind, figuring out how long is this lap going to take me and what am I getting out of it? And I basically went today, I launched at Hokipa thinking like, if I launch at Hokipa, I can be immediately in the bumps, crank up to Maliko or past Maliko and just be hammering runs out, come in, go pick my son up from school, go back to work, all
Beautiful.
within a certain amount of time. And it is there. Not quite as far as like what I'm detecting as far as efficiency upwind. It's good. It's much better. And I'm talking about V2 versus V1 BRMs.
Yeah.
The V2s are much better upwind. And
Which one are you using?
I'm on the Kanaha.
Yeah. So that's the best one upwind.
I feel like for upwind, yes.
Yeah.
And what I've been finding is I ran, me and Sinbad both decided to crank upwind. I'm really curious to see how does this BRM go against the ozone. We're trying
Yeah.
to figure out what goes upwind better. We were very similar. She was going slightly better than me in the lulls. I was going slightly better her in the puffs, but I'm much bigger than her.
Yeah.
She's lighter than me, so that makes sense. But we were very similar angles upwind. And then I have gone upwind with decent wingers, not pros, but not total beginners. And they're better than me upwind.
Right.
And that's with me doing, I'll go out with a 4-meter lit, thinking like, oh, this is, if I'm lit, I'm going to crank upwind better. And sometimes it's not like that. And
Yeah.
I've gone with the 3-2 and properly powered upwind, and the wingers still beat us upwind.
Okay.
Not by much. And if it's a good winger, if it's a recreational winger, you'll go upwind better than them.
It's such a delicate like window to actually be able to be really effective going upwind, and it obviously relates to your board and your foil. So maybe tell us, because you're very tall, so you would be how much do you weigh?
I'm it's like 200, so 90 kilos up or
Yeah.
down, 6'2". So yeah, I'm on the definitely bigger end of both parawing size, front wing size, and board size. I'm usually a size up from everybody else at the beach.
Yeah. And what
just 'cause
board are
I'm-
you riding at the moment?
I've been on KT. Today I took a Super K 104 production, Super K2, the new one, which I like a lot. Super easy board to ride. I have been riding, Keith made me a 610 by 1999 liter, which is an excellent board. But that board was built right before the V2s released from Greg. We started that board and it was getting built, and then he released V2s. And so as soon as I got on that board, I'm like, yeah, I don't really need that anymore. Cause now I got a way bigger range out of the V2s. In other words, I could take a bigger Parawing and more control and get my low end and be in control on the top end. So suddenly I'm like, okay, here we go. We're scaling down boards just because of that release of the new BRM. So the latest one that is, I was in there this morning with Keith. It was like 6'2", 20 and a quarter, 90, right around 90 liters.
Okay, 1-to-1 weight to volume ratio.
Yeah, and I feel like we're going to land around that zone. I wouldn't have said that if we only had V1s on the BRMs.
Yeah.
I would have said +5 to +10 for most people. It still is a good rule of thumb.
Absolutely.
But I feel like what I've been telling people is if you had the 2.9 BRM V1, you can now ride the 3.2 Kanaha and have more material in the air and get a better low end because it's bigger than the 2.9, but have way more control on the top end. And that's how the range expanded.
Nice.
So you're able to put more material in the air and hold on to that material longer and more control. So you did the low end that you gained is that you have more control on the top end, which allows you to take a 3.2 instead of a 2.9.
Nice.
And that's how you get the low end and the high end. So that's how the range expanded in these latest versions that Greg released.
And you have you tried different shapes, or was the Super K kind of your go-to straight away? Because I think a lot of people are bringing in this mentality of long, narrow board into Parawinging, which I think we need something a little bit different, because I think a little wider gives you that stability when it's really cranking. And I don't think we need all that length, because the Parawing, once it's juiced up, it'll pick you up on a sinker board if you're doing it properly. So how did you go through, your iterations of, length to width, and even, I think thicknesses as well is something that I've been focusing on lately.
The 610 prototype was more a test of this new bottom shape that Keith's doing and a new rocker line, rather than dimensionally. That dimension can change, but the biggest thing that we came away with on the newest prototype, and what I was telling Keith needs to be prioritized, I think, is the board needs to be, number one, it needs to be stable. Meaning, like, you're standing sometimes for a long period of time waiting for wind.
Yep.
So you need to be able to stand on it semi-comfortably, and they need to accelerate quickly, meaning a gust lasts from like 3 to 7 second little zone where you're looking at this gust coming and you feel it, and you got about 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, up to about 7 seconds, and then usually the gust passes. So you need to be able to get that board to accelerate in anywhere from 3 to 7 seconds. And it's a different acceleration than a downwind board where you're going with a bump, because we're traveling across most of the time on takeoff. There's occasions where we do get in like a downwind board.
Yep.
So it needs to accelerate quickly, diagonally through chop.
Yep.
And so the rail profile is very important. And the thicker it gets, the more it gets knocked off course. Meaning, like, I got chop coming in from the side. It's not directly downwind. And what you really want to do is, if you think about a board, you have all this chaos happening on the surface, and 75 centimeters down, your front wing is just cruising in nice underwater, nice and calm. And your front wing is telling the board, quit moving. I just want to get up and go, but you're moving all over the place. So the board's job is to just not move that foil and let it engage in clean water.
Yeah.
So if you look at a board like that, of like, it's got to control all this chaos on the surface. And then you start to understand certain curves work in certain areas. And you want that board to move forward and not get knocked off course.
That's so interesting. And it makes so much sense to me now because I've been riding a very thick board. I think it's 6 inches and 1/8. It's very, very thick and it's very corky. It's a set 510 by 18, so very narrow. 85 liters, and I'm 82, so with the gear, 85 liters, so 1-to-1 weight to volume ratio. And when it's 25, 30 knots, man, it's not easy to stand on that board. It's so thin and corky, and it's just everywhere. And what you're saying about getting up, going crosswind, I find it so difficult with that board. I really just prefer to go downwind and wait for that super puff that I just, like anything, would pick you up. And I'm doing now a board that's a 5.8 by 20 at 65 liters. And I think that's going to be easier than the 85 liters to get up in over 20 knots.
Yeah, I feel like too, I really was, before V2s came out, on the bandwagon of a mini downwind board being the ultimate Parawing board. Because I feel like you're always searching for some sort of advantage in the water. And how I would describe that is, if you've ever surfed and you paddle out on a surfboard that's a little bit too, not quite enough liters, and you're trying to catch waves, and yet you feel like you're at an instant disadvantage. You're kind of like, if a little bigger board, I'd be like a little further out. And so I always, on dimensions of boards and front wing sizes, I always want to be a little bit at an advantage of what the conditions are doing. And so I guess my point is I've always been a proponent of like taking a slightly larger board than maybe you need for the having that advantage when I need it. And
I agree with that, man. And the Parawing still has a very narrow wind range. So that advantage is where you can maybe downscale on your Parawing size, which makes it more enjoyable, makes it probably easier to go upwind as well, because overpowered, you're not going upwind. Overpowered, that thing is just going to crank you downwind. So I love that the V2s, I haven't tried the V2s, the BRM V2s yet, but I think, Parawings that came after BRM, I think the next big jump was maybe the Flow with the stability. And then I think Ozone's done a great job with theirs. There's other companies that came out with their Parawings that I wasn't really excited about because I don't think they matched the level of stability and upwind, all of that stuff. So do you have a preference on what Parawings you guys are gravitating towards on Maui?
Personally, I've flown the Ensis in the water. I've flown all of them on the beach. But as far as most of is all BRM. And I have ridden I had all the B1s. I've ridden the Ka'a, the Kanaha, flown the Maliko 2 on the beach, but haven't flown the Maliko 2 on a run.
Yep.
And we ride so much together. There's a big crew of us here, and some guys have D-wing, some guys got the duotone, this guy's got the Ozone, and we're always riding around each other, some going upwind. So we have a good idea. Like that run I did with Cynthia was to test, like, what goes upwind better? I don't know, the Ozone or this thing, and we were very similar. And so I guess I mostly have a background of being on the BRMs as far as my opinion on what Parawing is better or worse. And I would say what prioritize for me, I'm not like wanting to race a Parawing, but I am concerned how upwind it goes. Because if it goes upwind good, it tacks good. And we should pretty much, I know we're not that good at tacking, but in the future, we should just be tacking the whole time.
Oh, yeah. It's an elegant way to ride, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, you're like, oh, tacks are crazy. I'm like, yeah, they are, because you're getting ripped the other way because it's not penetrating into the wind. So the better upwind it goes, the easier it is to tack. And when you start tacking, you gain efficiency upwind. You're not jibing every time. Jibing, of course, you'll do it sometimes, but I feel like when you go out, it should be as easy as it is an inflatable wing to tack these things.
Yeah.
And the new ones are much easier to tack. So how well it goes upwind isn't based on like, oh, I want to race upwind and beat this guy. For me, it's like, if it goes upwind, chances are I'm going to be able to tack.
Yep.
And that gets me upwind faster to come back downwind.
100%. And was that the main driver for you? Like the fun you have in the water for the time you spend in the water? Is that what drew you to the Parawing? Because I like to understand from different people, why are they so invested in Parawinging right now? And I feel that you're really heavily invested in it. Like I'm out in the water and I don't know, 9 out of 10 times I'm on the Parawing now. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, it is becoming like that. I mean, I still love to downwind SUP.
Yep.
And that's like number one. And so obviously I proned in the surf when the surf's good. And then I used to wing a bunch, but how I viewed winging was like, this is just something to do if you can't downwind.
Yeah, 100%.
So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm cruising around and, tacking and stuff, but all I really wanted to do is downwind or ride a wave. And once you've experienced downwinding and the pureness and freedom of not having anything in your hands, obviously other than the paddle, you understand that that's like the ultimate feeling, I feel like, on foiling in the open ocean. And then once Greg, I will say before Greg, there was Sam.
100%. Yeah.
Who had a lot of innovation as far as the concept. There's Cynthia too with her parachute thing, but really Sam Reynolds was huge in the early Parawing stuff.
Was that the first one who, like, the first person who really took that concept of being propelled by something that looked or resembled a parachute into like doing something? Okay, let's refine this into the next level.
Yeah, he showed up at the beach. It was a controllable mini kite on short lines, and it was controllable. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Are you gonna make those? He's like, I'm trying. So I mean, it was like day zero, and he would show up at the beach and he would do runs, Maliko runs, with it, to come downwind. He wasn't really staying upwind, but I do remember talking to him on a few runs. He's like, a couple times I just kind of stayed in one spot in the surf by Kanaha, and I got like 3 few waves and I had to blast downwind. So he was wanting the same thing of like, I just want to stay in one spot and ride waves.
Yeah.
And that's really what Greg had progressed it to. And the turn, why I didn't immediately gravitate towards Sam's was the handles.
Yeah, it's so, for me, it's still like so interesting because I'm the same as you. I saw the pocket wing and I'm like, that's cool. But it was like maybe 5% off what it needed to be for me to jump on it. And I don't know what it was about it because I couldn't even see that he wasn't going upwind. I just saw this thing and it looked a little bit uncontrollable. But when the BRM came out, and it looked very familiar. It looked like a kite. I know how to kite. I know how to kite foil. I know how to do this. So it gave me a very relatable thing that I bought it within 5 minutes of watching Greg's videos. I'm like, he cracked it. And then obviously by watching it 100 times, I was like, they're going upwind. And then I just buy now, like immediately.
Yeah. What you just said is exactly my thoughts too.
Yes.
I'm like, I knew exactly what to do with it. As soon as it came out, I'm like, oh, there it is. But it wasn't, I can already downwind SUP, Maliko. So I was more interested in riding waves with it. Meaning like, I don't want anything in my hands and I want to get into a big set wave outside and just go.
Rip. Yeah.
And so that was what was going through my head. It wasn't like, oh, now I can downwind with it. That wasn't even really like, I'm like, I don't really, the downwind thing would be fun, but I really want to ride waves with nothing in my hands. And so for me,
laps, right? Just do those laps. Yeah.
correct. And it did do that. We would get into these bombs on the outside, and you just park it, and then you just
amazing.
You got 3 minutes just all the way in, and then you know, it took us a little while to figure out how to stow it and pop it back up, and then we're popping up, get right back out, and then that's where the upwind became a thing, because you kick out going, I don't know, do 20 turns, and you end up a little bit downwind. You're like, I got to get all the way back to the top of the peak. And then once you start mixing in with the wingers, you immediately see how much at a disadvantage you are coming back upwind.
Yeah.
And with the V1s, I always felt like I was at a disadvantage versus a winger getting back upwind.
Yeah. Same.
And as soon as I got on the V2s, I was like, oh, I'm equal or better now with the wingers in a lineup of getting back to the top. So that was
that's a game changer.
Yeah, a game changer as far as feeling like what I was telling you about being at a disadvantage in the water versus an advantage. Now I felt like, okay, I'm at an advantage in getting back to where I need to be. In the V1, you're like, as long as the wind holds, I'm pretty good. But if it dies, I'm like, oh, all of a sudden I'm going downwind and I'm losing. And the V2s didn't solve that, but it got much easier on the upwind angles.
How do you ride, Elliot? Are you riding with a harness, a hook? Are you hooking in? I just ride unhooked all the time. I think I got used to that feeling, and I think it's nice, and I like the purity of it, but also just, you know, the tangling hazards that having additional things, you know, cause. How are you guys riding?
I've gone through, thought I needed the harness, never used it, went with no harness. And where I ended up is, if I'm riding waves, I never use a harness.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't ever feel like the pull is that hard where you're grunting and pulling. It's just kind of there, and you're just kind of finessing it the whole time. But since I've been experimenting with this up-down, like how feasible this up-down thing is, I've been going super lit up on a parawing I shouldn't be on, just to see if that helps upwind, which means you got to hook in because you're lit.
It feels like a two-line kite by then, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so my first thought, what I did notice right away is you can go upwind better unhooked than you can hooked.
Explain that to me, because everybody's like, all my friends here are hooked in, and I'm like, I don't know. I have such a good feeling on the bar, and knowing that sheet angle to make, you know, the parawing super efficient. And I think it's more about that than just, you know, leaning on it. It's just finding that angle that your parawing is performing to get that upwind angle on it.
And I was of the same opinion of like, oh, you got to hook in to crank upwind and really like leverage against this thing. And I would be hooked in, and I'm like, man, my angle I'm just getting like, it felt like I was on a header the whole time, just getting knocked off the wind. So I unhooked, and I just was like, whoop, like 10 more degrees upwind. And I'm like, what? And then I hooked back in, and I'm like, ah. And then I unhooked, and I'm like, and then what I realized is that you actually, when you're that close hauled into the wind, you need to find like a feather the thing a little bit and adjust to the gust. And then when you disconnect your body from the bar, you're able to manipulate the foil.
There's a yaw to it maybe as well with the board.
Well, there's a yaw, but there's actual instances when you come over a chop that you're able to pump and gain speed. And when you're locked in and you're just pushing with your legs and you get a little wind shift, the wing will stall, and you don't get that ability to like use your pumping and go over the terrain.
I know what you're saying.
So
like
it's
the
almost
suspension
like,
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so you can do these little micro pumps upwind separate from the wing, and then you're able to manipulate the wing instantly versus being hooked in. Granted, when you do need to rest your arms, you hook in. But if you're talking about efficiency upwind, almost every time I unhook, I'm able to point higher and go faster. If I can just deal with the arm pressure.
Yeah, and I like that you said that because the first person that actually validated that for me, because when I'm going upwind, again, I'm not going to go 10 kilometers upwind. You know, that's not what I'm doing. I'm going to go up the peak and down again. That's all the upwind I need to do. I live in a bay, so we don't have a point break or anything like that, but we do have high performing areas in the bay that the bumps are a little bit, you know, steeper, and we just want to ride that section. So for me, instead of going downwind and just crossing that and then continuing on, I just go park my car there and I just do laps on that high performing spot. So, and I also feel that going upwind, doing 4 tacks upwind does not tire me as much. You know, that's cool.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your technique of, you know, stowing versus wadding. What are you guys doing in that regard? Like in wave, do you actually put it into a belt? Do you not do that? Do you just hold it?
Mixed. I use the ozone, the new ozone
Belt.
stashing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Cynthia kind of helped. Cynthia actually, before that, she helped make that, but she was custom sewing these ones with this like super stretchy pocket.
It's so helpful. It's so good.
Super easy to just stuff it in there and pull it out, and which is really, you don't really want to think too much about it. Like once you get it wadded up, you just want to get it away and your hands free. If I'm wave riding and the wave's a good wave and I know it's going to push all the way through, I'll stash it and just roll. And if it looks like one of those waves is going to fizzle, I'll kind of hold it. And I'm more of the back line. I like to scoop the lines from the back and then rip my wrist up to cinch the front lines. And then I just put the bar into the backhand and I just hold the thing in my backhand usually. The reason I hold it in the backhand is if I'm cutting, say, left, which is be into the wind, I can hide the wing behind my hip.
That's a great
out
tip.
of the wind a little bit. And so sometimes I'll do that. And then also, too, when you're ready to redeploy, you simply hand the bar back to your front hand and just throw it out.
Yeah.
And that's been pretty successful as far as the number of times it comes up without tangles. And I know if I do it wrong, I can already tell it's going to be a bad deploy.
Yeah.
Like
prepare
I'll
for
know
it as well.
if I didn't quite get the lines right or something. If it got
Sometimes
wind.
it spins as well. Does a little death loop on you. You're like, oh shit, this is gonna be a terrible redeploy.
Yeah, and I know that now. I'm like, oh, it's one of those, and I'll just pop it, redeploy, and get it again. And so, you know, now I feel like it's pretty. And then on downwinders, obviously, you're just gonna let it deploy it. But what is nice, I did notice on Parawinging downwind versus SUP downwind is the ability to like group up. Meaning,
That's so true. You're riding
like-
together for more of the time.
so we'll go. It'll be like Cynthia and Dan, and there's a whole crew of us that will go. We'll all launch and scatter, and at some point, like I might be ahead, looking back, and someone fell. I'll just kick up, do like a little bit of a reach, and we all group back up and then come back down. And so we're constantly just regrouping anytime we want. And then SUP downwind, it was kind of free for all. Like
It has to be. It's a shame, but it has to be,
Yeah,
man.
it
Like
is.
sometimes if you fall, like it's gonna take you 20 minutes to get up, especially if you're out already in the channel or something. You're like, God, this is, I don't want to stop. Like you just go, hope you make it.
Yeah.
And that vibe completely changed for myself as well. Like I still go downwinding with my mates that are on the paddle, and they like the best one finishes the run, and I finish the run with him, and then I go back upwind. I finish with the second guy, and then I come back upwind. I go with the third, and then like whoever's really just starting out, I'll go all the way back up and kind of like escort them in. And I do like four downwinders when they're just all still waiting for the last guy to come in anyway. And I'm just going back and forth and doing more runs.
Yeah, it's a whole different dynamic on the downwind scene. And also the mindset of, at least the mindset here is when you're SUP downwinding with your crew, everyone's like, we're going to go have fun. It'll be a fun run. I'm not racing. And then you get out there and it's just fucking the race.
Immediately, like you're first up, you're already looking behind. Who's coming?
Who got up first? Oh, you got up ahead of me. I got to catch. It turns into this, like, even though you're saying, oh, it's going to be a fun run, we're just going to do turns.
We'll surf.
Everyone's just trying to, like, hey, what was your time? And so there's always this, like, what, you know, when you paddle out of Maliko, it's like Kane and those guys can get up and flat waters pump out to the bumps. And when you're first doing Malikos, you'll paddle like a good 5 minutes out to get into the bumps, into the good bumps, and then start from there. And so it's kind of like, you know, the better you are, the earlier you take off, you know. So there's kind of like this pride thing of like, I'll take off here. And you're like, you know, you're not as good, so you better paddle further out. There's always been this like thing of like, who could get up earlier than the next guy. And if you got up earlier, then you're in the lead. And then you got to catch me, and I beat you because I got up earlier. So there's always this thing of like, oh, I can get up early. But then suddenly with Parawing, that just got thrown out the window. Like, completely. I can get up whenever I want. So that whole thing is eliminated. And I can position myself anywhere I want. If I want to go out to the good bumps, I can. If I want to launch in here, I can. If I want to go hit the surf on the way down, I can. So suddenly your mindset of like it being this unintentional race was just gone because if anything, you're trying to stay with everybody, which becomes much easier. So even if I get ahead, I'll look back and I'll just be like, oh, yeah, I'll kick up for a little bit and come back to the crew, and then we reassemble and just all eventually get down. But it's never really like racing.
It's I know what you mean. It's and also for me, I think just not having a paddle in your hand, like that changed how much better I got and how quicker that happened, because you can't dig yourself out of a hole with a paddle. You really have to make good decisions. If you make a bad decision, you don't have time to redeploy a Parawing that's stowed. And if you do, it might come out like a, you know, dog's breakfast or whatever. So reading the bumps, my bump reading went from here to here in a couple of sessions. Like I could see it in my videos. I'm like, oh my God. And turns as well, because I don't care if I fall. I don't care. I'm trying to understand how sharp of a turn I can do with different foils. Falling on my butt, like not caring, just to push the gear because I know I can get up. But you said that downwinding is still number one. SUP downwinding is still number one, or just downwinding in general? Because you could downwind with a Parawing. I'm
like, got this Parawing dude here. Hey, just grab your Parawing. No, you need to paddle.
Yes.
Yeah, just take this thing right away. Come on.
Smaller board, smaller foil. What do you think?
Just constant, and it's a daily decision of, am I going to paddle or on a Parawing?
It's a big one, man.
Lately, it's just been, you know what? I'm just going to Parawing. It's always just like, and so somehow when you say that, the run becomes, oh, it's going to be easy. It's going to and you can get lulled into that. And for the most part, it is easy, but there are still kind of some safety things that if you look on the general social media, it's like, oh, everyone can get on a little board and go a mile out and you get any wave you want. And you're like, yeah, you can, but I've gotten myself into situations, and everybody here at some point has gotten themselves into situations that people need to be aware of in making decisions on equipment and how far out they want to go. And that's what I'm saying, like, when we talk about board design, it's really, it depends a lot on where you're riding, what types of conditions you're in, meaning like the gorge,
whatever.
Hey, if something goes wrong, I'll just swim right there.
Yeah. Chuck a skateboard on.
If I'm out at Maliko and a mile out and something goes wrong, I got other issues I got to deal with. Like I need different types of equipment. And then the other thing that happens too is when you're calculating your volume, and if you're planning on Parawing downwind, a lot of times I weigh 90 kilos, so I need this board. What they don't account for is your vest, your phone, your water, your snacks, your screwdrivers, all the other stuff. And then if you've ever weighed a rash guard wet versus dry, And then next thing you know, you weigh 8 pounds more.
Yeah.
And then the board that you just built, that was the perfect volume. And you get out into big, wild water and you're sinking and falling. You're like, what happened? This board I tested, in flat water or whatever was working great. And next thing you know, you're 8 pounds heavier in wild water, looking to take off and not enough wind. And so you got to account for, if you're planning on downwinding, is probably punch the volume up a liter or two to account for what you're going to take with you on the downwinder. And I think a lot of people forget that. They just figure out their weight and that's the volume that I need. But I notice a radical difference if I wear all my stuff I need for a downwinder versus take it off. It's a big difference.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, and we're always with 4.3s here. It's cold. 8 months of the year, it's freaking freezing. So I actually put 5 liters onto my boards for it to be a 1-to-1 weight to volume ratio. And if I were to rejig my quiver now, because I do have a downwind board, like an 8.2 by 19, 115 liters. That's my paddle board. But I use it if I'm going out in the ocean and we're doing a big run because it's a safety device for me. I don't have an inflatable wing to float on. I have nothing. The Parawing doesn't give you anything. Getting a bigger Parawing and stuffing it with you, it's not a guarantee that it's going to help you either because flying a Parawing in 10 knots is the worst thing in the world. And you guys don't even know what that is because 10 knots doesn't exist in Maui. But it's not a safety feature. Like there's people thinking about bringing, a 3-piece paddle with them. Man, that's a lot of gear to take out. I'd rather just chuck it on a big board. I'm used to downwinding on a big board. That's, sub paddle, like it's fine. And that's my safety. And obviously I have the comms, I have the, PLBs, all that stuff as well. And vests, obviously, and water. Like even the vest and water, you have like a kilo of water in there. That's a liter. Just boom, it goes up pretty quick.
Yeah, that was one of the other points I was going to bring up is on board dimensions. It seems like there's 2 camps. There's people who already know how to sup downwind, picking up parawinging as a possible way to downwind without needing to paddle. And then there's people who've never supped downwind in their life, have only wing.
Yep.
And are wanting to acquire a parawing to possibly downwind, to learn without having to do the paddle thing. And if you're coming from sup downwind, you're used to balancing on like 17, 18 inch, 19 inches is wide.
It's super wide. Board. And I kept it wide on purpose because I'm not that great.
But if a winger coming from winging, if you put them on a 19 board, well, they're freaking out. But if you come from downwind world, you're like, oh, this thing's super stable. It's 19 wide because I normally ride a 17 wide. So they're coming from 2 different angles. And then the other thing too is chances are if you downwind sup, you already own a big, nice downwind board, which will work perfect as a light wind parawing board.
Yep.
In other words, if the conditions are super mellow and it's super light, there's nothing that will get you up faster than a downwind board up to a certain point. If you're coming from winging, chances are the board you own is probably -5 to -10 liters from your weight.
25 wide.
And you own that board and you want to get into parawing, but you don't really have a board. In other words, you're going to be sinking on your wing board. So you're going to need to fill in that gap of this new board, which is like not a downwind board, but a bigger than a mid-length prone, which is where we're landing now, which is not a prone, not a downwind. It's right in this zone that would cover a light wind wingboard. And obviously you're not going to paddle it downwind unless you're really, really good.
Yeah.
But what I have found dimensionally is the boards that we're building for parawing work very well as long range prone surfboards. Meaning like they're bigger than what we consider a mid-length. So Foil World considers a mid-length like under
5.5
6
to
feet.
6.0,
Under 6 feet.
Yep.
like in surf world, that's a short board.
Yeah.
Surf world, like a mid length is like under 8, but more than 6. Like in that 6 to 7-ish range, that's the true mid length. And so these boards are ending up in this zone that is bigger than a prone board, but smaller than a downwind board. And they work really good for this long, I call them long range paddlers, meaning like if you have a break that like at Ka, it's kind of a paddle out. It's maybe a 10-minute paddle out. And these boards, the Parawing boards, work insane as larger prone boards. You can't really duck dive them, but they paddle insanely good and they catch waves really early. So when you're thinking about buying a board and you're like, it can double as if you're in a place that has like a long area where you need to paddle really far to get to. They can double, you know.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my quiver and where it's going to end up. I think ultimately I'm going to just update my 85 liter board to just a different shape, keep it at 85 liters, but just make it completely a lot wider than it is. 18 is way too narrow for what I want with parawinging. But then if I think about a really light wind parawing board for 80 kilos, which is an average, you know, rider weight, I guess, I think I would gravitate to something like a 6'2" to a 6'4" max, and 10 liters over my weight, to try to keep it thin still, and maybe 21 wide max as well. I wouldn't want it too much wider than that, but that would be a sick board that you would get up on anything for parawinging.
Yeah, I'm with you on this slightly wider than downwind numbers. Like I said, a couple months ago, I would have been like, long narrows away.
Yep.
But the more that I ride, there's not too much of a drawback to 20-ish. But you do gain a lot of stability. And what the main thing is, it allows you to thin the rail profile, which allows it to cut better versus getting knocked when the chop hits it from the side. So that's a big thing, is just that profile being able to get a little bit thinner. So you're gaining the volume through somewhat the width, somewhat the length. And then it does seem too that the bottom, this bottom shape that we're been doing with Keith, and I've been really fortunate to get boards with Keith, because he will do anything. He never questions. If I come in there with like a crazy idea, he's like, let's do it. There's never like, it's not going to work. And so I'm really grateful that I can walk in there and come up with these weird, sometimes very out there concepts, and he's totally willing to do it, and he will build them and test them. And if it doesn't work, he'll build another one. And that's how these concepts get built, is you almost need to make bad stuff to learn from it to get to the good stuff. And what we're learning is we need a board that, like I said, is stable but accelerates very fast.
Yeah, like 3-4 pumps, you're up.
I need it to like respond now.
Yeah.
And what downwind boards do is they have this big bevel, and they're fairly thick. And so you engage them, and you got to wait for it to come up to engage again. And so there's this, and if you watch Jeremy Riggs do his thing, it's like ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. And we don't have time to like ba-boom, ba-boom. We got to like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
We need to like hit it and go. And so with those types of boards, there's like a lag in when you hit it and it responds. And that's largely the thickness and the bevel angle and the bevel shape.
Yep.
And so what we're trying to do is get the boards to respond faster to that engagement. And it's
just that release off the water. And it's so cool to hear you talk about it, because I think the pop-up with the Parawing is a little bit different than what people think. And for me, what I try to do is push the board down and then kind of like hop up and release everything from it. And that's when I kind of pump the wing as well to get that power, get an initial movement so I can get the foil to engage. And then once I feel that I get a little bit of speed, it goes up so quick. It's so quick. And it's 3-4 pumps. You're riding, sometimes less, you know, if you get that release right, and the energy of the water, the energy of the Parawing, it will just propel you forward so quick.
Yeah. What I realized with Parawing, which is very valuable, you learn very quickly if you have a bad board. Meaning, like, if it's sticky, you know it's sticky. And if you try to test that board on a downwinder, like sometimes you get a lucky bump and you pop right in. You're like, I don't know, was the board good or was it just a lucky bump? And so you need to do it a bunch of times and be like, oh, this board's sticky because I popped up a bunch of times in a downwinder. Parawinging, you know, there's nothing helping you.
Yeah.
You're relying on that board. So you know right away, if it's a good board, you know right away. If it's a bad board, you know right away.
Yeah.
And what I've tried to describe to people is it's very similar to a full suspension mountain bike, the shape of the board. So you have your mountain bike, you have a front and a back shock. You put air in the back shock, it makes it stiffer. You know, air in the fork, it makes it stiffer. You have tire pressure. If you run flat tire pressure, it goes through the bumps really nice. If you pump too much air in the tires, it just pings all over the place. So your rails is your air pressure. If I have flat tires, it looks like this. If I pump the tires too much, it looks like this. It's very vertical. And what that translates to is that when I go through the water, I'm getting knocked around. This chop hitting this. If I deflate the tires on the rail, all of a sudden it tracks straight. It's the exact same thing as a tire pressure on a mountain bike.
More forgiving.
And so this rebound that I'm describing to you, there's a compression and a rebound rate and a back shock on a mountain bike. And we have the exact same thing on a downwind board. We have a compression, a rebound, and this affects how quickly it comes back. The thickness is how much travel do we have. And so what we're trying to do with these Parawing boards is put air pressure in the back shock, meaning like if you've ever done a pump track on a downhill bike where it's just all, and you want a really fast, quick reaction, so you pump air pressure in the rear shock. And what you do is by change that bevel angle, all of a sudden you're getting a quick release. And when you take air out, it gets to be this like vroom, and you're waiting for the rebound to happen. And that's all in the angle bevel, the angle length, and the thickness. And so we're trying to get a quicker rebound is basically
That's such
what
a
it
good
amounts to.
explanation for it as well. Look, I think, I don't even know what's going to happen after summer in the Northern Hemisphere, man. So much evolution will happen because I think a lot of people will just buy a Parawing to give it a crack in summer. Are you going to travel to Hood this year or anything like that?
We, as family trip, we might. We went not last summer, the summer before, and so it's kind of in the talks, but not for sure yet. I would love to. I mean, a place is just summertime. It's beautiful there. There's all kinds of stuff to do, even beyond foiling. Between just fishing, the coast there is actually really good for waves.
Really,
a lot of people don't ever go out there. And obviously, up and down the river, it's just that's
everywhere.
kind of the place to be during the summer. I feel like, but like I said, it's hard to leave Maui because it's just every day.
You guys are spoiled up there. I'm going to be there from the 14th to the 31st of July, which is cool because Keith's going to be there with the V2 of the Super K. So I'll definitely get a go on them and try it out. But what do you think will happen by the end of the year, man, with all this innovation? Do you think... Look, honestly, I have a prediction that by the end of this year, 20 to 30% of wingers will all have a Parawing. The next year, those numbers will double. And I think it's, for a lot of wingers, you reach a point where you stagnate and you're just a little stale in the progression. And if you're not chucking a backflip, what else are you going to do on the wing? And then the Parawing is that first option for you to try to get into downwinding with some skills that you already have, apart from learning the sail and learning how to fly. So I think that's where it's going to go and grow the most. But what are your forecasts?
It very same, almost the same. It will start with, I'm going to buy one. Oh, just try it. Oh, okay. I mean, I can ride a wave and I don't have the wing in my hand. Oh, maybe I should get a bigger one. It will start like that. And I am the same opinion with the wing. I love winging. I do think, like, I look at these kids now and what they're doing on the wing,
crazy.
the jumping and the wave riding. But now when I see somebody riding a wave and they're dragging their wing around with them, I'm like,
And not doing much. If you're using like the wing
mean,
to do some, some jumps and, clearing sections, that's
100%.
incredible.
Yeah,
But
the
I
stuff
agree.
that Cash is doing and those
Yeah,
guys,
yeah.
Unbelievable. I'm not like, those guys are on a whole nother level. But when I see somebody riding a wave with the wing in their hand, I'm like, if you can get rid of that wing, just grab
You're going to
this
get
and put it
50% more
away,
fun
and
straight
then-
away.
And then it's a whole nother can of worms as far as the feeling goes. And some people get, like, for me and you, we saw it and instantly knew what to do with it. And it's like what I tell people is like, it's like you discovered, they're like, hey, we figured out this way to fly to the moon. Are you interested? Oh, no, we're just going to hang out here.
Earth is good.
Someday maybe we'll just fly up there. I'm like, okay, well, if you want to fly to the moon, it's right here.
Yeah.
You figured it out. You can do it. And so some people will be like, yeah, I'm in day one. And for other people, it takes them a little while to kind of like be convinced about it. What I feel like is going to happen is this. You will buy as a SUP downwinder. There's a little bit of like SUP downwinders, like, I don't know.
Because they downwind already,
wait.
so they're like,
Well, they're not anti-Parawing, but they're kind of like, well, you're not paddling up, so
yeah.
you're over here. Not, it's just getting to be a little bit of like, well, I'm a paddler.
Yeah. I like
I'm
that
not
I know
Parawing.
how to paddle, but I choose the Parawing so they can
Well-
just shut up.
So that brings me to my point, which is in here, right? This is the Vicovia I used to SUP downwind. And stashed in here is, if I break my paddle,
Trusty
is a
old
2.2 Moliko,
Beauty.
which weighs absolutely nothing. And the bar is this big and it fits in here. It doesn't weigh anything. So when you snap your paddle a mile out, woo, you got this.
Safety device. Yeah.
When you get injured and you cut yourself and you need to get in to the lifeguard, put it in the air. When you're in M2M and M2O and the bumps are like well overhead and your boat left you, kick it up in the air. Go find them. Let them find you. Like, why would you not have that? It weighs nothing. I understand if it was a weight penalty, but
Yeah.
if you snap your paddle, if you get in trouble and you can't physically paddle and you need to get to somebody or someone needs to locate you, why would you not have a Parawing?
Yeah. True.
And so I feel like even if you don't want a Parawing, if you're a SUP downwinder as a safety device, you should just have one on you. If it doesn't inhibit you. And I don't think right now there's that 2.2 Moliko weighs
No, it's nothing.
and it just fits. So I feel like the SUP downwinders will have them on them, even if they don't want to ever learn to Parawing as a safety device. And then eventually they're going to be like, oh, I can get up with this thing. Yeah.
You know
Oh,
what's
maybe
going to
I should
happen? They're going to
just
go
get
out
this.
and it's going to be, I'm just going to try it once. And then they chuck on a 50-liter board, an 80-liter
Yeah.
board, and they're going to be, what is... I remember the feeling of my first time going downwind on my 85-liter board. And I was screaming, laughing, just everything at the same time, feeling like this is what it should be because there was nothing else I could do apart from turns. There was nothing else that my brain told me to do apart from like, I got to rip this thing now. And it was the best feeling I've ever felt. And ever since, I'm like, I've touched the paddle maybe 2 or 3 times since September last year.
Yeah, I force myself to paddle to maintain it because I'm planning on doing M2M and paddle a MUA, not M2O. I did
year?
M2M last year. Yeah, I'll do it again. I did it last
Nice.
year. So, you need to
Oh,
you
100%.
do it banging out runs and paddling. If you're not paddling, you need to be in good shape. So I talked to Alex Aguirre about this the other day. I'm like, are we just going to like get on the start line and just grab the Parawings and be like, screw it, let's go.
this, yeah.
And so the organizer, we're like, where does a Parawing fit in?
Yeah.
It's not winging, it's not paddling, it's going to be its own category, and people will Parawing across. And we're trying to figure out, like, is it going to be it will be a thing for crossings. Are you going to Parawing across or paddle across? The question is what tactic do you take? Because you can get to the Molokai side and the wind can shut down and you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
But you'd be dead in the water with a wing. So, it's like that kind of glass where you're not getting up no matter what you're on. So then does it turn into like Parawing with my paddle on my back so I can get up if I need, which puts me back on a downwind board.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of gray area we're trying to figure out. Like,
That's pretty cool though as a category because that's strategy as well. What foil are you going to be using? Do you pack a second Parawing with you? Would it help? I don't know. It's flat.
Yeah, you would have to. You would probably skip a size, meaning like if it was 3-2 weather, I'd take
Go
a
5.
4-7.
Yeah.
And just throw that in as a reserve shoot. If it really went down, you'd have a way out that you could at least get up. And I think you'd have to do that. And if you didn't do that, you'd be like risking it.
So the M2M will have a Parawing category this year?
Well, we were just going to, if
Go.
a bunch of us decided we're just going to do it and we don't know where it's going to, there's not an official Parawing category because she doesn't even know the sport exists, Claire.
Yeah.
And it's so new that no one's really ever crossed the channel on them.
It'll be cool.
So I'm
think it
signed up
fits.
to SUP it. We all signed up to SUP, but there's a bunch of us that are like, hey, maybe
The
we
rogues.
if we just send it on
Everybody's
the
going to be
Parawing,
like,
see what
Parawing
happens.
thing. You're going to be flying before everybody else. They'll be like, all right, maybe I'll try it.
But on the side note, what I was thinking about is like, and I'm not racer guy at all, but so the problem with these downwind races, there's no way to cover them. Like, we just see these little snippets. We get the start. Someone drones the start. Someone's like, oh, this one in the middle, and then the end, this is the winner. And here's the video. It's a minute long. And that was the crossing. But we haven't had anything that we could set a course up and Parawing up to set up a downwinder where we just crank up to an upwind buoy and then you round this buoy, you have to stow, and then you're downwinding.
Like a 5K upwind run going down, maybe a couple laps of that.
And I mean, I know they do, I think in winging they do that where you have to flag the wing out or something and pump downwind, but you literally round this mark and you have to stow, and the only way you could pop back up or put it back up in the air is if you're off foil.
Yeah, you have to start from scratch, yeah.
It would be pretty interesting because you need to have downwind skills mixed with Parawing skills, and then you could finally get this whole downwind scene into a course that you could actually shoot and get like some sort of a idea of like, it's basically a way to get a downwinder into a zone that is viewable by either public or we get cameras on it and like the whole thing.
That'd be awesome because, I mean, I saw the races up in Europe. Boz was organizing a couple of races with the Parawing, a course race, and it's not my thing, the racing thing, but I can see the upwind because that's part of that's Parawinging for me, going upwind and then enjoying a downwind run and combining those two and maybe doing 2 laps or 3 laps of a 5K run. That's a 30K total course. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and then I mean, what front wind would you take? I don't know. I'd have to take something I know I can pump and stay on foil the whole downwind, but it's got to be fast this way. So there's kind of like, it hasn't been done before, but I feel like there's maybe going to be some events that are like that where finally we can get like a downwind type event in an area that is, we could maybe shoot it, or people can see.
Let's keep
see
this
people
idea
coming
going, man.
downwind.
This is such a great format for, like you said, people can watch it from a cliff somewhere and they could see the whole thing unfold.
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, and then your skill set has to be. You have to know how to downwind, to read bumps downwind. You also have to know how to parawing upwind. So it brings in a kind of a cool mix of. I mean, a lot of us know how to do all that already, but I mean, right now, if you're a downwinder, some downwinders never wing, or they never go upwind. They're just downwinders, and they race on downwinding. So anyway, that was what I was thinking is what could be a cool. I think I just made a couple notes on. I mean, I guess the last thing was just like we're just finding that the Parawing is a very easy and quick way to test not only downwind boards, but roll through a bunch of different front wings and see how they feel in a downwind scenario without having to commit to the whole downwinder. So we're using the Parawing as a way to test boards, specifically too for downwind, because if they work good getting up parawinging, chances are they will paddle up very easily too. So
yeah, and I think for me, the really true, and that extends onto foils, because I can only really feel a foil if I'm going downwind or surfing. If I'm winging something, everything feels incredible. I'm like, it's fine. But as soon as I go downwind, I'm like, I can feel the limitations, the bottom end, top end, how it turns, and then I'm like, okay, I know the characteristics of this foil. And for testing gear, 100%, you can do so much. I don't know how much you could actually do on the water by changing front wings, but you can definitely get a lot done in a day.
Yeah, versus committing to a whole downwind run and then you figure out, oh, it was tuned wrong. We'll go back up to the top and try it again. Where you can kind of get these little mini runs in, get an idea of what's going on, make a change, go right back out and get into that same zone where those bumps were and get it. So we're using it in that way too, as far as the board and front wing development, but mostly on the downwind side.
Dude, I have one more question for you before we go, and I know this is a long chat, but I don't care. There's a lot of good nuggets in there. You've watched probably, the best board sports athletes ride. Who are the guys that are really, inspiring you today in parawinging, so people can maybe chase them up and get a little bit of that froth from them?
I mean, there's just a big crew of us that are all at this, as far as like one on the, on the foiling side, for me, Kane, he parawings too, even though he probably doesn't, a lot of people don't know that. And he's sent a few runs. He's kind of focused on the M2M M2O
races,
right now. So he's definitely in paddle mode right now. But I mean, and he is our nephew, so I'm like
a little biased there.
Of course, but yeah, I mean, as far as like, I'm really my mindset is very wanting to find ways to make the equipment better and make it easier for me to be in the water more. And so I'm constantly in my head thinking of gear, and that went back to the Kite days. And Kane has that similar mindset of just always tweaking stuff, trying to find like a little bit of extra out of this or that. But he's on a whole nother level where he'll show me stuff and I'm like, how did you think of that? And he's just got the brain for it.
Yeah.
And at such a young age too, because I know when I was his age, I was definitely not designing foils.
How old is Kane? I don't even know.
He's 23, 4, right? I mean,
young.
I definitely at that age was not that smart doing what he's doing right now.
He to me as well, like just even like watching him ride effortless. It's such steez. Like it's the best. Like I come from, like I said, that era that of watching Lou, like Andre Philippe, when he came out, I was like, what is it? He was the man for me for so long, just because of the style. And then I think Kane, when I watch him foil, I'm like, God, that's how it should look. Effortless and beautiful,
Yeah, but he has a very the equipment he comes up with. He's very aware of the beginner or people that are not top level. So he has a good understanding of what people. I mean, I would call myself like intermediate. I'm not like pro level foiler, but we go all the time. So like at something at our level, he understands what we need. So on the gear development side, and obviously like having Kai grasp onto the Parawing and take it to Jaws, that was kind of a big thing.
Did you film that wave?
Yeah, and I had interviewed him earlier on when he just got his Parawing. I'm like, is this Jaws thing? And he's like, I don't know. And like, yeah, we don't know. Someone needs to go test it to figure out, is this a legitimate thing? So that's going to progress too on I don't know. Is it possible to Parawing into it and then stitch it and then you're good to go?
I thought he was going to get skunked on that one because he like depowered it, but it was flapping everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, because it does create a lot of drag, even though people say it doesn't. If you're just holding it and it's not really stowed properly or just, wadded up properly, it does cause a bit of drag. And I was watching him go down this face. I'm like, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. And he just pulled out of it. I'm like, oh my God. But I guess like he's at a point now where he's really happy with his foils, which took a little bit of time to get, into that. Like he knows his gear now. So yeah, I can't wait to see what he's going to do with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could say there's like any one particular, there's just a really core group of us out here that are really into it. And we love doing it every day. And we're just we're in the same boat as everyone else across the world. And like I said, this form in particular that you do, these podcasts, will help people wherever they're at, whatever stage they're at, as far as getting into it. And then, like I said, it just reaffirms like a lot of the stuff you say. I have the exact same feelings. I'm like, okay, so that was correct. Like,
and that's that's the purpose of this thing. When I started Downwind, SUP Downwinding, I filmed my 10 first sessions, and I never posted anything about it because I didn't have time to edit videos or anything like that. And then changed careers now. I'm a firefighter. I work 4 days. I'm off 4 days. I have all the time in the world. And I filmed my first Parawing sessions, and I put them all online. Like the first one, like after that, like my 10th one, I stopped counting them, and then just continued on with other things. But I've learned just as much as I think people have learned from just watching me get skunked out there from these conversations. And I feel like I have a little bit of a responsibility now to document a little bit about how the sport evolved. I'm very happy that Greg got back to me. I'm going to chat with Greg next on the 25th, a few days from now. And I'm dying to get Sam on the podcast as well, because
Sam would be awesome too.
But I feel like he's a little bit of an introvert. He said yes once and then he kind of disappeared. And if you see him on the beach, just tell him, come on.
I'll tell him.
Because I feel like we need to, pay our respects to him, because without him, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't think Greg would have thought everything that he thought about without Sam, So if you do see him, just say, hey, 4 rats chasing you.
I'll tell him. Yeah, I agree with you totally on that though.
Yeah. So, dude, look, I feel like we could keep talking another hour, but look,
we could.
Let's
I'll have to go again. I don't know. Do episode 2 at some point.
Yeah. Look, I think after summer, I'll touch base again, because it's going to be a different industry. By the end of the year, we'll have so much innovation. And if you're willing to come back on, man, I would love to have you chat about other things and whatever you're working on. If you ever need to get the word out about anything that you're doing, let me know, man. Having you here is an honor. I've been following you directly and indirectly for a long time, from kite surfing, not even knowing that you had filmed videos that changed my life in a very big way. So thank you, man, like for everything that you've done for the sport and this just good energy that you bring to Parawinging as well.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.